Welcome to Drama-Free Healthy Living with Jess Cording. I'm your host, Jess Cording. I'm a registered dietitian, health coach, and author, and I'm here to help you streamline your wellness routine and establish a sane, more balanced relationship with food and fitness so you can reach your goals without losing your mind. On this podcast, we'll talk about nutrition, exercise, self-care, mindset, and more. I'll be bringing you interviews and expert insight on the topics that matter to your health and wellness. Hi, and welcome back to the Drama-Free Healthy Living podcast. I'm your host, Jess Cording, and I am so excited to bring you today's episode because it is all about brain health, one of my favorite topics. I could talk about this all day. So I am chatting with registered dietitian Barbie Boules. So Barbie is a registered dietitian, certified health coach, and meditation teacher with over 20 years of experience, specializing in the unique needs of women over 40. In her practice, she works as a private coach, community educator, passionate speaker, popular corporate wellness programmer, and respected dietetic intern preceptor. She's had the privilege of guiding thousands of women around the country on their journey to better health and creating vibrant corporate wellness programming for over 100 companies around the world. Barbie takes an evidence-based whole person approach, emphasizing nourishing foods, quality sleep, daily movement, and developing solid stress skills. She's passionate about a mindful approach to healthy aging, prioritizing cognitive and cardiometabolic fitness, and Alzheimer's disease prevention. So we have a lot to talk about. Now, I just have to quick little note about today's episode. Having some audio issues. So just to know that if things sound a little funky, it's just, serves me right for trying to record something during Mercury retrograde. But I hope that you enjoyed today's episode and that you find Barbie's insight useful and that you're going to find lots of stuff here that you can apply in your own day-to-day life. So without further ado, let's get to the episode. Barbie, it is so nice to speak with you today.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you.
Yeah, so I know that, so I would love for you to just tell us a little bit about, what made you decide to, did you always know that you wanted to be a dietitian, or was that something that kind of found you along the way?
Yeah, dietetics is actually a second career for me. I went to school for marketing and PR, and I did that for a few years, but around, I think it was like 26, 27, I was not satisfied. I'd always loved food. There's medicine and science in my family, and I just kind of started thinking about it a little bit more and woke up one day and found a school near me that was teaching nutrition and dietetics, and I signed up immediately and started within a month. So it was, I came to it sort of second, but I never looked back. It really gets me up every morning. I absolutely love this field.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I was a career changer too. I had a BFA in writing and publishing. I'd been interested in nutrition, but I was like, I don't want to go do chemistry. And then
right. Right.
A lot of chemistry.
A lot of chemistry, a lot of math.
It was worth
it. It was completely worth it. And I always, throughout school, what I noticed was that there was very little distinction between men and women. And that really interested me, with the exception, of course, of pregnancy and lactation. And I just always felt like that's lacking, So
yeah.
I decided that when I started a practice, that would be my focus, women. And of course, it's evolved. My practice has evolved as I have. I'm now 53 and starting in my early 40s. Of course, I started to notice some changes. I did some research, and to make a long story short, what I realized is that we experience a lot of changes to our metabolic health in our 40s in the menopause transition. And then I became really interested in brain health and the connection between metabolic health and brain health. So that sort of became my specialty. And then a few years ago, my mom was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, and she lives with me, and I take care of her. And so it became very personal, in addition to just a professional interest. So now I'm just incredibly passionate about helping women understand how to traverse their 40s and 50s in a way that is going to set them up for excellent brain health, excellent metabolic health, longevity, and really enjoying our later years.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And to echo what you said, I love what you said about really helping people enjoy their later years. I
Yeah.
feel like there is so much um, just anti-aging nonsense out there, like all this stuff about pressuring women to like stay the same and like to not embrace
Hmm.
change. And I've worked so much with women who are navigating transitions, hormonal transitions, whether it's related to just going through the life cycle or as a result of like breast cancer treatment. And
Right.
so much of the heartache comes from, comparing where they are now to where they were before, or just societal
Hmm.
pressure to stay 25 forever. And, when they really are able to thrive and I've had, I'm in my very late 30s as we record this
Hmm.
episode. And like,
Hmm.
even myself, like I've seen that there are just things that, change over time. And that can actually be a really wonderful opportunity to learn new things and to,
Yeah.
develop new routines that help us feel great.
Oh, I could not agree more. And I have to say that in my 50s now, I am happier and I believe healthier than I've ever been. So and I want to support other women to feel that way and to experience that because I wouldn't trade where I am now to be in my 20s or 30s again for anything. It's the kind of richness of the experience of getting to this age. And I think it's kind of a cliche or theme that you just really do give fewer f's about the stuff that doesn't really matter, and the things that really do sort of a light is shined upon, what really is important. And I think hopefully for many women, what I try to impart is to really focus on our health, the inside, our blood pressure, our blood sugar, our lipids, and the health of our brain. If we're focused on those things, our appearance sort of takes care of itself, as opposed to trying to focus, based on appearance and maybe compromising what is going on the inside, including our mental health. So I really just try to encourage, like, if we're taking really awesome care of our brains, we're exercising, we're eating really well, we're staying hydrated, we're going to bed on time, we're managing our stress. And that is going to manifest a physical, appearance that is probably in pretty good alignment with what we're looking for.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That you phrased that so perfectly. I think sometimes people are scared of, um, you know, taking this focus away from the physical. At least that's something
Yeah.
I've observed in my work, that they feel like if they don't stay super focused on like the number on the scale is like the only thing they're
Yeah.
paying attention to, or like what they look like on the outside. And I'm sure you've seen this in your work again and again, but it's
Hmm.
like when someone starts taking care of themselves on the inside, it sounds like such
Yeah.
a cliche, but like the outside, it also,
Follow suit.
looks great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Absolutely. And
amazing.
I think we just have it so backwards, because we can do all kinds of things that are detrimental to our actual health, our metabolic health, the health of our brain, our mental health. We can do so many things that are super effective for fat loss, but don't necessarily create good health. And the
Mhm.
number on the scale is not representative of your body composition, which is a much better indication of how you're doing metabolically. So, yes, of course, we want to keep body fat, in good check, particularly visceral fat, and we want to increase our muscle mass or fight back against that natural loss of muscle mass that starts occurring at age 30 and then really accelerates in our 40s and 50s. We want to fight back against that. And certainly that has to do with our appearance. But if we're taking the approach that this is really about me feeling amazing and being able to hike and ski and run around and swim and go on vacation and play with my grandchildren, like these are all the things that are really there. Those are also the things that are going to keep us motivated. I mean, honestly, if the number on the scale kept us motivated, we would not have a lot of the problems that we have. It doesn't
Yeah.
keep us motivated. What keeps us motivated is really having a real why behind these things. And that's sort of more forward thinking about how do I want to be living my life in 10, 20, 30 years? And, it has a lot more to do with keeping your brain and your body in good shape on the inside.
Oh, cheers to that. I want to shift a little bit to the brain. This is
Yeah.
something I spent like early in my career. I remember I loved my neurology rotation. I
Mm-hmm.
worked as an ALS dietitian for a number of years, but I found myself
Mm-hmm.
like obsessed with, and this started really early in my career, but I was fascinated by like the mind body food mood connection. And it was so
Mm-hmm.
exciting to me when people started talking about this in the
Mm-hmm.
media, like on the, um, but I'd love for you to share with us a little bit about um, just some important links that people should know about between diet and brain health.
Yeah. So, I mean, to be clear, as you know, as a dietitian, there's a lot of unnecessary food fear, pseudoscience in regards to food and health out there, especially on social media. That said, how we nourish ourselves absolutely has an impact on our brain chemistry, its structure, and its health. So, nutrition can be very nuanced, a bit confusing. The good news is we do have solid research supporting a few key sort of areas of what we can be doing with our dietary approach that offer significant protection for our brain long term. And there are several approaches to this, several approaches to good brain health, good metabolic health. There is no one dietary approach that's right for everyone, but they have a few, all of these approaches that we know about to be super health promoting for our metabolic health and brain health, they have a few things in common. And that would be low saturated fat. So keeping, saturated fat to about 7% or less of our total calories, low in added sugar. So this does not include fruit. We want to be eating the fruit, people. But because
Yep.
it comes, sure, there's a little bit of sugar in it, but it comes along with vitamins and minerals and hydration and fiber and all kinds of good stuff that we don't even know about yet. So we're not talking about fruit. We're talking about added sugar, the stuff that we add to our coffee or our beverages or our desserts. High fiber. So I usually recommend more than 30 grams a day, and high in polyphenols. So these are the compounds that are going to be found in plant foods that generally reside in the pigments that are anti-inflammatory, disease fighting, and really good for the health of our brain. So basically, this is kind of a plant forward approach. You don't have to be vegan or vegetarian, but just prioritizing plants in your diet is going to go a long way. And I really like to think about what we want to include as opposed to what we, worrying too much about what we want to exclude. I mean,
Yes.
certainly there are things that, ideally we're minimizing because we do know that in excess, not little bits here and there, but, in excess, they can be problematic. But if we're more focused, and we know this from research, the more people are encouraged to include nutrient dense foods rather than focused on what they should exclude, we fare better over time. So just be thinking low saturated fat, low added sugar, high fiber, high polyphenols. So what that translates to on your plate is lots of plants. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, that is so important. And I would tend to agree with you about just that it's so helpful to focus on what you can add instead of what you can take away. Just from a mindset perspective, it's so different. I think that
Absolutely.
like what I've people get so it just feels so different. Even if like the goal is
Mm-hmm.
the same, it just feels so much more positive and empowering to be thinking about what you can do as opposed to like, up, shouldn't have that, shouldn't eat that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's punitive, right? And I mean, part of food, a really important part of food is pleasure. We are
Mhm.
designed to enjoy food and we don't want to miss out on that. And if we're thinking more about, and we can get into sort of the nitty gritty of the foods that we know to be the most beneficial for brain health for sure. But the more we focus on, adding these things to our plates, the better off we'll be. At least that's what I see in my practice, and that's what tends to bear out in research on these types of things.
Now, as women age and transition into perimenopause and then into menopause, I know that these are some times where we start to notice some changes in,
Mm-hmm.
obviously how we look, but also how we feel. And that can include mentally and how our brain is functioning. And, what are some of the brain changes or brain related symptoms that women might experience during that time?
Yeah, so just up front, it is really important. And I think that now that, menopause is really having a moment and more people are talking about it, and with over 1 billion women being postmenopausal by next year, I think that it's really kind of it's finally being talked about the way that it should be. And we're finally starting to really acknowledge that the menopause transition is a whole body event. And it's not just about the ovaries and a loss of fertility. This is a change, a shift that impacts basically every system in the body. And a lot of this change originates in the brain. So the female brain relies heavily on estrogen for healthy function. And as estrogen levels become erratic in the menopause transition, so when we begin the menopause transition, it's not this nice, beautiful, slow and steady decline. It's a lot of up and down, which is partly why we can feel kind of out of sorts or worse. And ultimately, this decline in late perimenopause and postmenopause, we can really feel this. Glucose metabolism and efficiency of communication within the brain changes. And these are changes that most women experience as the familiar colloquialism brain fog, difficulty concentrating, difficulty learning new information, forgetting where you put things. And this is pretty common. I mean, it's estimated that over 60% of women do experience this to varying degrees. And many women will also experience an increase in anxiety and or depression, especially if that's something that's been in their history. And then hot flashes and sleep issues, these are symptoms that originate in the brain. So there's a lot going on chemically. I mean, estrogen receptors are all throughout your body, and the brain is rich with estrogen receptors. So you can imagine as these levels fluctuate up and down pretty wildly for anywhere from 4 to 10 years, and then ultimately decline, there are going to be some changes. The good news is about at least the cognitive issues. It appears that for most women, not all women, but for most women, about a year or two post menopause, so after 12 months of without a menstrual cycle, without a period, these cognitive changes do tend to stabilize. The brain adapts. So this isn't like a permanent brain fog situation for most women. So that's the good news. And there's a lot we can do in the moment, during the transition to sort of mitigate what's going on. And of course, if your symptoms are severe, like really compromising your ability to function, this is when you would want to go to your provider and perhaps have an evaluation, maybe see your neurologist, and just make sure nothing more is going on than these, kind of hormonal shifts. But it's also important to understand that it's not just, the brain fog or the fatigue or the mood instability. We also, estrogen acts like a layer of protection for our metabolic health. So with the decline of estrogen, women can see their blood pressure going up, their LDL cholesterol and ApoB going up, their glucose metabolism getting weird, elevated HbA1c, elevated fasting glucose, where none of these were ever an issue. Estrogen helps kind of keep all of that in check. And when we lose it, these numbers can become weird. And so we really want to be good patients and stay on top of getting these numbers evaluated at least annually. And then, of course, I think, but see, all of that is silent. We don't necessarily know that we have high blood pressure, high cholesterol, or, high HbA1c. What we do notice is that we might be gaining weight or certainly having an increase in belly fat. And that is a very normal occurrence. As we lose estrogen, body fat redistributes to the abdomen. And that can be sort of uncomfortable because our clothes fit differently. Even if we're not gaining weight, we do experience this redistribution to the belly area. But what can be really problematic about this is that visceral fat, that deep fat that sits behind the abdominal wall and lives among our organs and is highly inflammatory, that type of fat can quadruple in midlife. So, and with these changes in estrogen. So it's definitely something that we want to pay attention to over and above the aesthetic. That abdominal fat is a big risk factor, not only for metabolic disease, but also neurodegenerative disease. So, and, with 2/3 of Alzheimer's patients being women, so we are twice as likely as men to develop Alzheimer's disease. These are things we really want to be paying attention to.
Thank you so much for shining a light on that. I feel like that doesn't get nearly enough airtime, and so many people, and this is just, I guess culturally speaking, we're conditioned to just focus on the outward appearance. But
Right.
to your
Of
point, like
course.
a lot of this stuff, like, you know, I have Alzheimer's in my family as well. And so this has been on my radar for a long time. But, if someone's
Yeah.
really never had to think about that before, it can be a total game changer in terms
Yeah.
of shifting their relationship with, with diet and exercise and their body, and just to think more about like the functional side of different aspects of our well-being and body composition. That's also having a moment, which is, as an RD, I'm like, finally, we're talking about this.
Yes, finally, we're focusing on what actually matters. And,
Yeah.
to that point, it's really, I mean, BMI has its limitations, always has
Mhm.
had, its limitations, but it becomes particularly irrelevant for midlife women because we are experiencing this shift in lowering of muscle mass, increasing in body fat. So even if our weight stays the same, which would be represented by BMI, we may not be in great metabolic shape because our body composition has shifted. So we need to take the focus off of the number on the scale, off of BMI, and onto body composition, because body composition is the foundation of your metabolic health. So that becomes really important.
And so if someone is recognizing that, maybe they would benefit from some adjustments to
Mm-hmm.
their nutrition, what are some of the things that you would recommend somebody start with?
Yeah. So again, like I said, there are a lot of different approaches. So I don't want anybody to feel put in a box. That said, I do have a personal preference in terms of just a place to start and then experiment. And that would be the MIND diet, MIND. So Mediterranean dash interventions for neurodegenerative delay. So MIND. This is the result of research that was done at Rush University, Chicago, that was published in 2015. And so in the 9 years since, there has been, much more research and kind of fine tuning and tweaking it a bit. But this is, again, an approach kind of combining the Mediterranean approach, which most people are familiar with and is consistently regarded as a really beneficial eating pattern for reducing risk of type 2 diabetes, reducing risk of cardiovascular disease, keeping weight stable, and good for blood pressure as well. And basically, it's identified a number of foods that we know to be particularly beneficial for brain health. And the people in this research who adhered to this dietary pattern most closely for 4.5 years had a 53% reduction in Alzheimer's disease risk. So that is really, really significant. And
Wow.
even in the people who didn't adhere perfectly, they still had a reduction in risk. And so the foods that are highlighted are, and everybody will have heard, the beauty is there's nothing crazy and new. There are no weird hacks or
Yes.
anything here. We've heard all this before. We just have to actually do it. So using olive oil as your primary cooking fat, getting fatty fish a couple times a week. If you don't like fish, and although you do need to check with your doctor, you may benefit from an omega-3 supplement. If you're a vegan or vegetarian, you can use algae supplementation. But again, you must check with your doctor before starting any supplementation. So olive oil,
Yes.
fatty fish, nuts and seeds. primarily for the vitamin E, really beneficial for the brain. Leafy greens. People who ate a serving of leafy greens a day had brains that operated as if they were 11 years younger than their counterparts who did not consume leafy greens on a daily basis. So my mantra is always leafy greens every day and then a rainbow throughout the week. So the next in line is colorful veggies. So if you are somebody who loves your veggies and fruits and can get all the color in one day, fantastic. But if you're like most people, and that's a little bit harder to do, just think about getting the reds, the blues, the yellows, the oranges, purples over the course of a week, but getting greens every day. And then berries, all fruits are great for you. Don't let anybody tell you that a banana is the same thing as a cookie, because all fruits are good for you.
Yeah.
But berries were highlighted as being particularly beneficial. And then beans as a source of fiber, phytonutrients, and protein. And then staying really well hydrated with water. So olive oil, fatty fish, nuts and seeds, leafy greens, colorful vegetables, berries, beans, and staying well hydrated with water. And then, if you're including these things and you're also including some foods that are just fun and pure pleasure, you're doing fine.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm such a fan of the Mind diet, and it's always so interesting. I feel like it's such a great tool, and yet so many
Yeah.
people are not familiar with it. But
Yeah.
it's what you said. It's not crazy stuff, though.
No, I mean, everybody's heard that these things are good for you. It's just, and here's the thing I find in more than 20 years of doing what I do, it's not a lack of knowledge. Usually, I mean, yes, people, especially if you are a social media fan, it's easy to get confused because there's a lot of misinformation, a lot of disinformation, a lot of pseudoscience,
Yeah.
and a lot of people kind of yelling at you that you're doing it wrong. If you're able to tune that out, you've heard all this before. It's just a matter of being consistent. And that's all there is to it. I mean, it really is as simple as just being consistent about what you already know. And hopefully that's reassuring. I know it's not sexy, but the low-hanging fruit is where we want to live. Seriously.
Yes.
And the only other thing I want to mention in terms of sort of nutrition is midlife for women in particular is a really good time to reevaluate your relationship with alcohol. Between keeping cognition in good shape, minimizing weight gain, protecting your metabolic health, alcohol doesn't really serve us in any of these areas. And so it's just a good time to, maybe establish some different habits if alcohol is a regular part of your life.
Oh my gosh, that's one of the things I've seen be like a game changer for my clients over the years. And honestly, for
Yes.
myself, like alcohol, I didn't mean to stop drinking, but I did because I was just feeling so crappy. I was like, maybe this will help. And it did. And I was like,
Yeah.
all right, cool. Like I'm not going back.
It absolutely does. And as a sober person, I absolutely needed to stop drinking. But I mean, the benefits that I noticed over and above just my improvement in the quality of my life, on a mental and emotional level, physically, I mean, it truly was a game changer. Quitting drinking and starting to strength training, major game changers
Yes.
for midlife health. And two pretty easy levers to pull. Again, it's
Yeah.
not about all these crazy rules and supplements and so on. Please, we have to stop looking for the hacks and the tricks if we're not mastering the basics. And, the basics are kind of eating in a pattern like I just described, and getting a good night's sleep, moving your body, and managing your stress in a non-food and non-booze way. If you can do all of that and really nail that, you don't need that supplement. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh. For real. Now,
Yeah.
kind of on a similar topic to this, I'm really fascinated by mental fitness, and
Mm-hmm.
in terms of just like helping our brain continue to function well, like, feeling like we are thinking clearly and critically, and that we can focus. I mean, also helping protect against, feeling just like fried. And I'd love to hear,
Hmm.
and I know you just listed some great foods to help with just brain function in general. But is there anything else you would want people to know about how we can be supporting our mental fitness through diet and lifestyle?
Absolutely. So, solid nutrition is a nice foundation. That said, you know, you're not going to notice a significant benefit from day to day. That's sort of a more long-term approach to supporting your brain chemistry and the structure of your brain. There are a few other things that are incredibly important for cognitive fitness, mental health, and long-term brain health that don't get enough attention. And one is something that's called building cognitive reserve. And we can achieve this by learning new information and using it. So sort of never letting our brain completely retire. Obviously, I don't mean never resting your brain. High quality sleep is incredibly important. And just kind of giving yourself chill time is incredibly important. But thinking of your brain like a muscle and giving it a workout. So, learning a new language, finding friends to speak it with, planning a trip and traveling and not using your GPS, learning to cook and doing that regularly, learning all about plants and building a garden. All of these things, sort of, hobbies that are intellectually stimulating, that you aren't just learning the information, you're actually executing the information that you're learning, is so beneficial to the health of your brain long term. It has been identified in research that people who have a lot of this cognitive reserve fare far better, even if they develop the tau tangles, the beta amyloid plaques that are hallmarks of Alzheimer's disease. It's as if your brain finds a way around um, problematic areas in your brain and continues to function much more normally. So building cognitive reserve. So just thinking of your brain like a muscle and continuing to work it out. Meditation is also incredibly beneficial. Now, I know meditation doesn't resonate with everyone. As a meditation teacher, I'm a bit partial, but don't think of it as something that requires a lot of time or completely zoning out or a lot of preparation. Just even 60 seconds, 120 seconds a day. Maybe bookend your day with a minute or two in the morning, a minute or two in the evening. Over time, your practice will build into something that is really beneficial for your focus, for your concentration, for your mental health. And but the important piece is to kind of do it every day. So you build on that practice. And I like to recommend sort of habit stacking with meditation if you're new to it. So after you brush your teeth, do a minute or two. After you make your bed, after you have your coffee, after you walk the dog. So it's something you're already doing every day. And then you just get quiet for a minute or two and use a guided meditation or put on some music and just focus on something. That can really help. Exercise is probably inarguably the best thing that we can do for the health of our brain besides sleep. I think they're probably on par. We can't have a healthy brain if we're not getting good quality sleep. But exercise helps promote good quality sleep. So moving our bodies is so crucial to the health of our brain and our metabolic health. And it's important to note that the health of our brain rests on our metabolic health. Blood pressure is one of the most significant modifiable changes that we can make to keep our brain in good shape, and exercise is excellent for regulating your blood pressure. So cognitive reserve, meditation, and exercise. And then finally, staying socially connected. Social isolation, loneliness is a huge risk factor for dementia. And this doesn't mean having a million friends or being the life of the party. It just means having a close-knit selection of people in your life who you feel safe with, who stimulate you, who you can, it's a give and take. So sharing, supportive relationship. And ideally, you have a few. So you have a few different types of relationships to navigate, maybe a partner, maybe your children, work colleagues, best friends, people you exercise with or do community work with. But so those are the four things I would say that are really crucial to maintaining good mental health and stimulating your brain in a way that's going to translate to um, really good cognitive health long term.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Barbie. I'm so excited to share this
Oh,
episode because it's
good.
just so much important information for people. So thank you for taking the time to
Yeah,
chat with us about all this stuff.
of
Is there
course.
anything else you would like to add about nutrition and brain health?
Not really, except to say that, the health of your brain it's a multifaceted approach, right? We want to be thinking not just about nutrition and exercise, which is what we tend to focus on when we're thinking about our health. We have to back up and have a broader picture of what it means to be taking good care of our brains. So, yes, nutrition and exercise are important. Getting a great night's sleep, like I mentioned, managing your stress in a way that doesn't lead to more stress,
Yes.
like alcohol or too much sugar or gossiping or scrolling or things like this. Finding ways to manage your stress in a way that's going to actually relieve the stress long term. And then, like I said, building cognitive reserve, maintaining good social connection, all of this and just cultivating a life that brings you joy. I think that one of the things that I see among a lot of women in midlife is that they've lost a sense of what brings them joy. They're just sort of on a treadmill of taking care of other people, doing the things that need to be done instead of just stopping and taking a moment like Ferris Bueller. Take a moment and stop and take a look around because life moves pretty fast, and just making sure you're spending time cultivating real joy.
So important. Well, so my last two questions for you. If people
Yeah.
want to connect with you, learn more about your work, what's the best way for them to do so?
So I am most active on Instagram. I am the cognition dietitian on Instagram. I also have a website, barbieboules.com. I can be connected with through there. But would be the two ways.
Great. And then my last question is, and there's so many ways, I ask everybody this because there's
Mhm.
so many different ways to interpret this. And that question is today, at this moment in time, what does healthy living mean to you?
Oh, it means tuning out the noise and taking the time, not being in a hurry. It's not a race. Good health is not a race. Taking the time to figure out what really resonates with you, figuring out your why to good health so that you remain inspired and because no two women are exactly alike. No one can prescribe this for you. You've got to kind of do some introspection. And while you're at it, find your joy. But it means taking the time to figure out exactly what's right for you and then being consistent about it.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. It has been great to have you here today.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah, and for everybody out there listening, I hope you enjoyed this as well. If you like what you hear, please consider leaving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. They do help me continue to bring you incredible guests like Barbie today. And as always, guys, have a wonderful day and we will talk soon. Thank you for listening to Drama Free Healthy Living with Jess Cording. We'll see you next time.